This was the day Steve was going to propose. He had rehearsed it in his head all week, how he'd smile, how calm he'd look, how casually he'd pretend to be before dropping to one knee. For years, with Jane had led to this moment. For years of love, arguments, compromises, and sacrifices. At least that was how he remembered it. Sure, they had struggled. Every couple did. But Steve believed those struggles had only strengthened them. They had survived fights, distance, money problems, and stress. That had to mean something. That had to mean forever. Still, his hand shook as he sat alone at the table. He adjusted his jacket for the third time and checked his watch again. The restaurant was warm and softly lit, the kind of place people chose for anniversaries, birthdays, and moments that mattered. He had chosen it carefully, expensive enough to feel special, but not so fancy it would intimidate her. He wanted the night to feel right. When Jane finally walked in, Steve forgot how to breathe. She looked perfect. Not in an overdone way, no dramatic makeup or flashy dress, but effortless, as if she hadn't tried it all. Her hair framed her face just right, and when she smiled at the hostess, something about her seemed to glow. Steve felt a rush of pride. That's my girl, he thought. This was it. Tonight was going to be great. Jane spotted him and walked over, her heels clicking softly against the floor. She slid into the chair across from him. "Hi," she said, slightly out of breath. "Sorry I'm late. Got stuck in rush hour?" "Oh, it's all right," Steve replied quickly. "I know traffic's awful at this hour." Brief silence settled between them. Steve cleared his throat. "So, you hungry?" He immediately shook his head. "Of course you are. What am I saying?" He laughed nervously. "I already ordered, by the way. Hope that's okay." Jane smiled politely. "That's fine." The waiter brought water. Steve took a sip, his heart pounding louder than the restaurant chatter around them. Jane tilted her head. "So," she said lightly, "what's the celebration?" Steve laughed. "Celebration? What? Can't a guy take his girl out to dinner?" She raised an eyebrow, amused. "Really?" He hesitated. The moment suddenly felt heavier. "More real?" "Well," he said slowly, "the truth is, I want to ask you something." Jane straightened in her seat. "You see, we've been together for 4 years now," Steve continued, "and I just feel like it's time. I'd like us to move our relationship forward." Jane frowned slightly, not smiling now, not laughing. Confused but attentive. Steve could almost see the gears turning in her head, and suddenly, all his nerves vanished. "You see, Jane," he said confidently, reaching into his jacket, "I want to ask if you would marry me." He placed the ring box on the table and opened it. For a moment, the world seemed to stop. Jane stared at the ring. Her face went pale. Then she looked up at Steve, her eyes glossy, her lips trembling. Tears formed instantly and spilled down her cheeks. Steve smiled, relieved. "She's emotional," he thought. "That's good. That means yes." But Jane didn't say anything. She stood up slowly, her chair scraping softly against the floor. She shook her head once, as if trying to wake herself from a dream, then turned and walked away. "Jane," Steve said. Confused, she didn't look back. Steve sat frozen as she rushed out of the restaurant. The ring box remained open between his hands. What the hell was that? People stared. The waiter lingered awkwardly. Steve felt heat rise to his face. Why? What did I do? He thought, anger rushing in to replace the shock. Always dramatic. Always running away instead of talking. Typical of her. Later. After finishing an entire bottle of wine by himself, Steve stumbled out of the restaurant. The night air was cold, sobering, but not enough. His steps were uneven as he walked down the street, replaying the moment again and again. Why did she do that? What made her run away? They had fights, sure, but he had always been supportive. He prided himself on that. Like the time her father was in the hospital and she was falling apart, he remembered canceling a weekend trip with his friends to stay by her side. Okay. I did meet up with them later, he admitted to himself. But she said it was okay, and honestly, staying at the hospital every night had been exhausting. boring even. But still, he showed up. That had to count for something. She never appreciates what I do, he decided. He flagged down a taxi and gave the driver Ricky's address. Ricky's apartment building was quiet when Steve arrived. Too quiet. He slammed his fist against the door again and again. Hard enough that lights flickered on in neighboring apartments. Ricky opened the door, blinking. "What the hell, man? You know I've got neighbors, right?" "Sorry," Steve muttered, pushing past him. "Jane dumped me," Ricky said flatly. "Please, come in." Steve collapsed onto the couch. "I'm so pissed. The nerve of her dumping me after I proposed." "You proposed?" Ricky asked, unimpressed. "Yes," Steve snapped. "And she just ran off like. He stood up suddenly and slammed the door shut behind him. "Like a child," he sighed. "Didn't you cheat on her?" Steve froze. "What?" "Well, we settled that," Steve said defensively. "I was drunk. You know how it was?" "I told you about it," Ricky said. "And I remember telling you it would have been better if she never knew." Steve laughed bitterly. "So you're saying I should lie to her? Wow, you're such a great friend." Ricky stood up and faced him. "You didn't confess because you're noble. You confessed because you couldn't handle the guilt." Steve opened his mouth, but Ricky kept going. "You dumped that guilt on her so you could feel clean. Meanwhile, she's left wondering if she's not enough if it's her fault." Steve stared at him, stunned. "You're free of guilt," Ricky continued calmly, "and she's stuck carrying it. Such a saint of a boyfriend." The room fell silent. Steve turned and walked out without a word. Ricky remained standing there, confused, listening to Steve's footsteps fade down the hallway. Outside, the street was dark and empty. Steve walked aimlessly, Ricky's words echoing in his head. What does he know? Steve thought angrily. "I've been supportive. I'm not a perfect boyfriend," he told himself, "but I try. I love her, and I know she loves me." This proposal was supposed to be the change they needed. He was ready to settle down now. Ready for a family? Jane had wanted this too, hadn't she? She'd been dropping hints for years. And what about last month when she found out that she was pregnant? He stopped walking. The memory hit him all at once. He remembered sitting across from Jane, her hands shaking as she told him she was pregnant. His first reaction had been panic. "I'm not ready," he had said. "I have too much going on. I need to find myself first." It framed it carefully. Reasonably, how they can do away with the pregnancy. He had told her it was the smart choice. The responsible choice. He had even paid for it. "Maybe I pushed her into it," he admitted to himself. But it was for the best. They had talked it through. Or at least, he thought they had. "I guess she never got over that," he thought. "But now I'm ready. That's why I proposed." He stopped again. Maybe that's why she left. But still, he felt the familiar defensiveness rise. She should have said something. "I love her," he thought. "I miss her. How could I ever go on without her?" Steve started walking again, the night swallowing him whole. Then another thought crept in quiet, tempting, familiar. "I wonder what Nicole is doing," he thought, and smiled.